Hey artists, welcome to another video. Today I'm going to be trying something a little new. It's kind of an experiment, but I kind of know what the results are going to be already before I do it. But I'm hoping I can learn some cool stuff along the way and prove it to myself so I, stop forgetting. So basically what I'm going to be doing today is I am going to be doing the same painting 3 times, but on each time I'm using a different colored base. So for instance, the first one, I'm going to be painting just on a white canvas. Second one, I'm going to be painting one that I have basically primed a pale brown. And then the third one, I wanted to go kind of with a bit of a crazy color just to see how it ends up reacting. And since I figured my second one is more warm toned, I'm going to be going with a blue, like an ultramarine sort of blue for my third. I'm planning on transferring my sketch, same sketch for all 3 paintings, to each of those pieces of canvas, priming them with a wash of dilute acrylic paint. And then from there, I'm going to be using the exact same color palette. In fact, I'm going to be using the exact same palette with all the same paint. And in one sitting, I'm going to start with white, and then I'm going to move to brown, and then I'm going to move to blue. Basically, I'm going to see what effect painting on a different colored base is going to have on the final painting. Now, I think I know what I'm going to like the best. I tend to already lean towards having a brown base on my paintings. I don't really like painting on a white canvas. And every time I forget to prime my canvas with a different color and I end up sticking with white, the struggle is real. But I just want to do this as a test to prove to myself that painting on a white canvas just isn't for me, and hey, maybe it's not for you either. So yeah, let's jump into this video and we are going to see what happens. So for all of these, I am using oils. The 2 later paintings that have a colored base, the base is created with acrylics, but the rest of the painting is done with oils. So for the most part, these paintings, I go about them the same way. Same way that I kind of always go about my paintings. So I like to start out with the darkest parts first, so blocking in the nose, the mouth, the eye, the darkest parts of the ear. And then from there, I'm going in and kind of blocking in the next darkest parts. So here there's going to be a lot of deep shadows happening, especially since I went with reference photos that had really strong lighting. So you've got some really beautiful deep shadows with some really bright highlights. So starting off with that, also mapping in some of the markings. And then as I'm moving throughout my painting, I am going basically from darkest to lightest. So you can see here, I'm starting to add some warmth in the fur, some really beautiful rusty colored tones in there. So I'm going and adding those. And then adding kind of a bluish tint to my shadows is going to make that warmth in the fur really pop. I also wanted to set the wolf in a sort of background. I am painting on a white surface here, so it already feels like a struggle, but I at least went and helped myself by adding a little bit of an environment. Kind of have like a pale muted blue, maybe some sort of stormy sky, but I think it did help to bring more of the piece together for sure. So now I'm just switching to smaller brushes and starting to build up a little bit of fur detail, all that good stuff. Alright, so now on to the second painting. First one was done, put it aside. Now I'm jumping onto the one that has the brown base. Already, I feel so much better about this painting, and I've barely even started. So I'm starting this same way I did the first one, mapping in your darkest parts first, and then moving in from there. But I already know, because I'm not working with a plain, boring white surface, I can build up both the shadows and the highlights at the same time. Whereas with that white surface one, you already have your brightest, lightest value on your canvas. So you can only go darker from there. Not the case when you actually have a colored base. You could very well also tint your canvas with a middle gray, different things like that. I mean, do any color you want. But this brown is something that I use in a lot of my paintings. I find it lends itself really well to living creatures. It just kind of captures a little bit of warmth that you want there. And it I find it just makes your painting go so much more easily. See, here you can see I'm starting to put in some highlights, and it just makes them pop so much more, powerfully. It just makes it so much easier to build up really great values when you're not working on a white canvas. And now on to our third. So we've got that blue base. I use ultramarine blue here. It's a pretty unnatural color, but I wasn't going for natural. I was going for personality and experimentation. And I think it really did pay off. The vibe that this sort of blue base gave the painting is really, really interesting. And I'd love to experiment with this more in other types of artwork. So one thing here I noted as I was painting, everything felt like it was already a lot more cool toned. So those shadows, which I did want there to be a lot of cool blues in there, I wanted them to be cool toned so it would make the warmth of the highlights pop. The entire thing felt very cool toned, which of course it did. It's on a very cool tone base. So it was just one thing I found I was struggling with a little bit here is to build up some of those really nice warm tones, but I'll talk more about that later. Okay, so let's break this down a little bit and see what happened. One thing I just want to kind of preface this little, afterthought blurb with is one thing I noticed is because I'm painting the same thing 3 times, you're inevitably going to get a little bit better painting that one subject 3 times, especially if you're painting them back to back like I did. So I'm already aware of that. My later paintings should be better than the first one, but the struggle that I had painting on a white canvas compared to the other ones was such a reminder that I need to stop forgetting and not paint on white canvas if I can help it. What I found is it was so hard to establish your whites, your brighter portions, your highlights. As a general sort of result, because I was painting on a white surface, I found I was just really struggling with my values in general. It was just, I always felt like I was battling uphill when I didn't have to, whereas I really didn't feel that with my other paintings. Overall, I think the painting turned out okay on white canvas. I don't love it. I like the other ones a lot better. And I find that the white canvas painting is like lacking a certain sort of atmosphere. It's lacking personality. I don't know. Not a big fan. So let's take a look at the other ones. Out of the 3 paintings I did, this one was unsurprisingly my favorite. I love painting on a warm brown base to begin with. I find it just gives a really beautiful liveliness to things. The painting process itself feels a lot more easy because you're painting on a sort of middle tone. So you can actually build up both your shadows and your highlights at the same time. Whereas if you're painting on a white canvas, you are already at your brightest level, so you can only go darker from there. And it feels more difficult. Why make our life more difficult if we don't have to? Overall, I do love this middle one the best. I think it is really pretty. I think it turned out great. Because I chose a wolf that has a lot of gray tones in the fur, and especially I chose one that had some kind of dramatic lighting, it allowed me to play with more color. Because we've got that warm base to start with, having some really nice blue shadows was a really nice contrast to that. And I especially love the way it looks, having that blue sky kind of, you know, hastily painted in there, leaving some of that warm brown base. I love the way that looks. It's just, love it. So I'm really happy to be able to do that in this painting here. Overall, I think it's got a really good atmosphere. I love that sort of warmth that it brings to the fur, especially since we are painting, you know, something that lives. There's some warmth there. I find just painting on a brown base just makes it so much easier to achieve that. All right, let's take a look at our third one. Okay, so third one, I would say it's my second favorite. I didn't like the one on the white canvas very much at all. The process sucked. I don't love the way it looks in the end, but this blue one is definitely a different vibe. And overall, I think it's a really cool effect. It has a much more dramatic vibe or atmosphere out of all three, which makes sense because we started with something that had a lot more personality. You know, you can kind of say that an ultramarine blue has a bit more personality than, let's say, brown or white. So it ended up creating a much cooler tone painting in general, which is unsurprising. It definitely, you know, helps with that environment. If you are trying to create a really cool vibe to your artwork, taking your animal art in a little bit of a different direction, playing with different colored bases is a really great way to be able to do that. The other thing that I noted for this particular painting, because I was painting on a blue background, I did struggle to get the kind of warmth in the fur that I wanted. There's definitely different ways that I could have combated this. I could have built up my values first and then using some glazes brought in more warmth that way. But because I wanted to do this sort of alla prima style, wanted to get it done in one shot without going in and adding a glaze layer later, I definitely struggled to get those warmth tones that I was looking at, especially in like the highlighted region of the face. I wanted there to be some really beautiful, sunny, blasted tones there. And I definitely struggled to get that, but it makes sense because I'm painting on something that is so cool in tone already. I don't think this is a bad thing. It's information. Overall, maybe that warmth wasn't really belonging there. Maybe I wanted, or maybe I should have just been looking to amplify that overall blue atmosphere. I did learn a lot in this sort of experiment that I was doing. I reaffirmed what I already knew in a way, but there definitely are some things that I learned as well. I don't love painting on a white surface. Now I've got that proof that I didn't enjoy it very much. The other thing that I learned is you can have a lot of fun creating different vibes, different environments and atmospheres in your artwork by using a different colored base. It's definitely something that I want to experiment with a lot more in the future. Let me know if you learned anything neat. Maybe you want to try an experiment like this yourself with trying different colored bases. Make sure you leave me a comment and let me know how that goes for you. Thank you so much for joining me on this little painting experiment, and I will see you in the next video.